Welcome back, everybody. This is the Creation Liberty Hour. This is going to be show number 23 for January 23rd, 2011. My name is Chris Johnson. I'm the founder of Creation Liberty Evangelism, where we stand without apology to the truth of science and God's Word, and we believe in a literal interpretation of Genesis. We believe that's the literal account, and that evolution is not just a dumb theory, it's also a very dangerous and destructive religion. And if you're tuning in for the first time, or you're watching a recording from YouTube, you can always join us on the website. Just go to creationliberty.com, click on podcast, and you can join in live chat there where we will get to your questions and comments as we have time to do so. And that is every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I thanks for everybody who's joining us who is. And if you haven't signed in yet, there are instructions at the bottom of that page I directed you to. If you're viewing us from there are instructions further down on how to sign in if you're here for the first time. So a quick announcement before we get into this, because we have a guest today who's on the line with us, but there's a new article for you guys to check out. We just put that out a couple days ago in our Q&A section entitled, Is Tithing a Biblical Requirement?, which has stirred up some controversy in our discussion groups. So go and check that out if you get some time. And we may, because of some of the different questions and stuff we've had, we may in the future, in a few weeks here, because we have a few guests we have lined up for the next few shows. So as we get time, I'll probably dedicate an entire episode to just that topic, and we'll discuss that and take your questions on it. So tonight, Jay from the UK is joining us. He's actually volunteered to stay up till 1 a.m. just to join us on the show tonight so we could have it on time. And we're going to discuss some of the major problems with Christians who are trying to juggle billions of years and add them into the Bible, or to put evolution into the Bible and try to reconcile those two. So Jay joined our discussion group, and I saw some of his videos a few weeks back, and I invited him to come and talk about theistic evolution, or the day-age theory positions, because he makes some really good points from a biblical viewpoint. So Jay, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but you're right. Anyway, would you mind just taking a minute and tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jay Malakai, and that's a name that I gave myself. I wasn't always Jay Malakai. I'm 17. I am from the UK, as Chris said, and I'm also extremely tired.
I bet. Well, Jay, thanks for joining us here. Now, I take it that you hold the Bible to be true from cover to cover. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So we're going to take a look at some of the analysis of people who are trying to combine the evolution theory in with the Bible. So before we jump into specifics, I kind of wanted to mention that most Christians who accept billions of years in Genesis started out learning the religious theories of evolution first, and then later tried to make the Bible say this. Especially people like Hugh Ross, for example. We'll cover him. We'll have to talk about him just a little bit later, but they try to make the Bible say what they learned first, which means their foundational philosophy is coming from. Is there some background noise coming from your side, Jay?
There shouldn't be.
Okay, there was some feedback coming through, I think. But anyway, with the so the foundation that they're actually coming from is from the humanistic philosophy. It's not coming from the Bible first. They're trying to get the Bible to talk to their humanistic philosophy teachings, and that's backwards from how we typically come at it. We're supposed to use the Bible as the foundation for all knowledge to begin with, and when people don't do that, as some of you have seen on some of our shows, we've had some atheist guests on in the past few weeks, how that has created some really flimsy worldviews that they end up coming up with. So did you want to talk a little bit to that, Jay?
Well, I did plan to bring in something about Galileo earlier on, relating to that. Basically what they did in Galileo's time was, the general belief was that the world was fixed and the sun went around the earth. Mm-hmm. And the church read that into the Bible. So rather than using the Bible to interpret modern knowledge, they use modern knowledge to interpret the Bible. Yeah. Which has caused some problems now, and that's basically what I think is it's the same case with theistic evolution.
Yeah, so I mean that's what I get from it too, and there's a lot of people that really, they start off and they try to get just as the philosophers would have been trained in that day at the same time, they're going to college, they're getting trained in a philosophical worldview of evolution, and then they're trying to make the Bible say that, which is the wrong way to come at this. But I guess, you and I had talked over the phone about some interesting points. I guess, would you like to start off talking about the problems in the Bible concerning death before sin?
Yeah, there's Romans 5:12 that states that death came as a result of sin, not before sin. But Adam was the one that brought sin into the world, therefore he can't have evolved. He had to have been created as a literal man. Otherwise, death wouldn't have occurred.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you have death before sin, I mean, and so when people are trying to argue that evolution, because the evolution theory, of course, teaches that there were billions of years of dead things. That's how they claim that all these layers of rock got stacked up on the Earth, and that these different, all these different creatures got buried in there and fossilized. So, whoa.
Hello?
Yeah, a lot of feedback.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, but the thing is, if you have Adam standing on top of billions of years of dead things, I mean, how could God look at that and say it's very good?
Exactly.
So I didn't know if you want to talk some more onto that and give some examples.
Examples of what?
Examples of what? That's basically it. Well, like for example, if you have death before sin, I mean, why did Christ come to die?
Yeah, exactly. Death is a punishment for sin, not just spiritual death, but physical death as well.
Yeah.
So, why did Christ die if death already existed? What does sin do? It just basically means we get the same thing, only we do bad at exactly the same time.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, and on top of that, I mean, what was the last enemy to be destroyed in the Bible is death. I mean, read that. That's what it tells us. So, I mean, if God is supposed to remake the world back to the way it used to be, are we just, is he going to remake the world back to where the lion's tearing out the zebra's guts? I mean, that's...
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I don't think that's a renewed creation. And so those that are trying to compromise, I mean, even just, the billions of years of evolution into the Bible are trying to say, I mean, basically it nullifies the need for Jesus Christ. And so, I mean, that's where, I mean, we have people, even, the discussion group that you join, we have some people on there that are still trying to compromise the issue. They tend to be very quiet because they get an awful lot of opposition in there. But, they're still trying to do it because, they always try to, it's the kind of people that are like, well, can't we all just get along?
Yeah, I know. I've put up a couple of statuses recently. Tolerance is just another word for let me beat the crap out of your... Apologise for my language there. Let me beat your worldview up. But if you say even one word about mine, I will persecute you to the edge of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, and there we go. The can't we all just get along? Those are people that want false peace.
Yeah.
They don't want true peace. They want a false peace. And there's a whole bunch of false peace going around the world right now. So anyway, so we've got death before sin that causes all sorts of just major doctrinal problems. But you know what? There's something, even just in the Genesis, just from a logical standpoint, if you walk through the book of Genesis, and I have, Jay, you'll have to tell me if you've ever, because I don't know, have you listened to a lot of debates on this issue?
I've been in a couple of them myself, actually, yeah.
Oh, yeah, which, like, was it online, or was it, where was that at?
Online mostly, but I have had a couple of debates in person as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, there's something I have never heard addressed in any of the public debates I have listened to on the old Earth versus young Earth creation issue, and that is plants before the sun, as the Bible says. Whereas the evolution theory would have to teach that the sun was created first before the plants, where the Bible would teach that, the Bible teaches that, plants came and then the sun came later. So those that are trying to justify it have to take what the Bible says here. Have you ever even heard of someone address on how to handle that issue?
Nope.
I mean,
what I find is that they don't usually back it up with scripture. They just say, oh, science says this, so that must be metaphorical. They never actually use the scripture.
Yeah. And that's what the point of even what we said at the very beginning is that their foundation is coming from the philosophical worldview of evolution. It's not coming from the Bible first. They're trying to make the Bible say things they want it to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyway, that's one thing I had on the notes here that I just wanted to address that I've never even heard that mentioned before. There's all sorts of other problems. I mean, you've got how insects came after the plants and they pollinate the plants, and that's the only way they can grow and survive. There's all sorts of problems like that they talk about that don't really add up.
Earth before dinosaurs, Earth before the sun.
Exactly.
Earth before the light, even.
Yeah. And God, it
Water
says
before the ground.
it's very interesting. The beginning of the Bible starts out with God, and there's light, but there's no sun. And the Bible ends, I believe, in the last 13 verses where there is no sun, but there's light. So, I mean, for people, I mean, basically the humanist philosophy that a lot of the people, the compromisers, come out with is that they are using, they're basically trying to use the philosophy that the sun has to be there in order for us to have light, which is not the
It's
case.
the only light source on the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
I have never heard of a light bulb.
I know. I actually heard somebody do that when they were talking to someone one time and just say, "Have you ever heard of a light bulb?" I mean, sometimes they forget what they're talking about because it's so inconsistent. They lose what they're actually saying. So maybe we should talk some, I guess, about the local flood versus a worldwide flood. And unfortunately, I could not get your pictures to come up. For some reason, they would not pop up in my email. Otherwise, I would show a couple of those right here. But local flood versus worldwide flood. Do you want to start us off on this one?
Well, the first thing I can say is that water seeks its own level. So, it's kind of obvious. You're not going to get a massive box of water in Mesopotamia, but then somehow the rest of the world is looking into a giant fishbowl.
Yeah. Well, actually, what we should probably do, I guess, is for those people that may not know some of the scripture, that the Bible does say that the whole heavens, above the highest mountain, everything was covered with water. And I have to go back. I didn't actually prepare that. I want to see if I can find. I think isn't it Genesis chapter 9? I believe it says that.
No, because the flood happens in 7 and 8.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm getting myself mixed up already. Well, I'm not. I'll have to go look it up later.
I can't remember exactly where it was,
but it says everywhere under the the highest mountain, everything was covered with water. If the highest mountains are covered with water, it is no longer a local flood.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and here we have people like Hugh Ross that are teaching what he calls a universal flood. Have you heard of that before?
Nope.
No, well, actually, I prepared something. I'm going to switch the screen over so they can see this here. This is from Hugh Ross's website. He's got one of his guys on here that writes for him. But Hugh Ross says this too. It's the same thing. He says, quote, "The original Hebrew text supports a universal flood impact and allows for a regional locus when viewed in context," end quote. And that basically is telling us, and that's from the reasons.org. Hugh's ministry is called Reasons to Believe, and I've always said, is it Reasons to Believe or Reasons to Believe Hugh Ross? I still haven't figured that one out. But when he says that, taken in context, that this is what supports a local flood, that's basically what he just said. And when he says a universal flood, he's actually being deceitful. Because when people ask him, "Do you believe in a worldwide flood?" he'll say, "Well, I believe in a universal flood." Why can't he just say he believes in a local flood?
Because he's sneaky.
Yeah, that'd be one reason. Let me see if I can get to. Man, I really want to come to that. Hold on a second. I want to get that verse out. Yeah, here we go. It's Genesis 7:19. That was the one I was missing. It says, "And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered."
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that mean?
It means that the flood would have sought its own level, and that means it would have gone around the entire planet.
It even, yeah, exactly. And it even tells, the Bible even goes on the next verse to tell us how high over the highest mountain that it covered. So, and then, people go on to say, well, how did Mount Everest get that? Well, the Bible says in Psalm, I think it was Psalm 119, I can't remember if it's 119, I have to remember, where it says or Psalm 104, that's where it is. You read Psalm 104, it says, "The mountains arose, the valleys sank down, the water rushed off." So some of the highest mountains were not there during the time of the flood. And that's a whole other topic we could get into. But you had made a note here to mention about the rainbows as well.
Oh, I've forgotten my point about the rainbows. Oh yeah, the colour structure of a rainbow is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, indigo. No, indigo, violet.
Was it Roy G. Biv? Is that how we memorize that?
Yeah, it's one of them. Anyway, the bottom ones are like, I think the rainbow goes through all the times of judgment. So red is at the top because the world is reserved for fire. Blue is at the bottom because the world was judged by water.
I don't know. I've never actually heard that before. It's a possibility, but I have no idea if there's any.
I've written an article on it.
Oh, okay. But I just don't know if there's a for what the Bible says on that. I just don't know if we can verify that or not. But it's an interesting theory. But at the same time, well, I don't.
The other point about the rainbow is that it symbolises God's promise to never again destroy the world like that.
Ah,
He
yeah.
sends floods all the time, just like that image that I showed you.
Yeah, and so you want to describe the cartoon that you actually sent me? I couldn't bring that up though.
Well, it starts off with two dudes on a roof. Well, you can't see that they're on a roof at first. You can just see their heads. The older one says, "Look at that rainbow. It's a sign that God will never again destroy the earth with a flood." And the younger man says, "My Christian college teacher says it was just a local flood." And the guy says, then it zooms out from the roof, and they're both sitting on the roof. And he says, "So God promised never again to send a local flood," and there's a local flood underneath the house.
Yeah. So that becomes a pretty big issue, a contradictory issue. If it was a local flood and God promised not to send a local flood again, then God lied, according to their worldview. But if it was a worldwide flood, then God did not lie. He did not destroy everything again with a flood, and He's not going to. So I mean, it's another serious problem that they have to get past. That I've never even heard an answer to that. Not anything that's reasonable.
Surprise?
The only thing they do is they come back and say, well, and here's one of the things I wanted to bring up too. I don't know if you want to talk to this or not. They always bring up, well, there's some parts of the Bible that are allegories, or some parts of the Bible that have to be taken metaphorically. And I didn't know if you want to talk to that or not, what you've heard on that issue.
Well, I can verify that some parts of the Bible do indicate that they're not literal. Like, for example, the harlot in Revelation 17, the angel actually says to John, even though he's just seen it, "This will take some explaining."
Yeah. And
So
that's there's really, when Christ says, "I am the door," that doesn't mean He's made of wood.
Yeah,
He
that's
says,
another one.
He says we're sheep. That doesn't mean we're literally sheep. When it talks about when it talks about roaring lions, there are literally roaring lions to compare to things. There's sometimes where they compare things as a metaphor. But just because there are some parts of the Bible to be taken allegorical, does that mean that the account of Genesis, chapter 1, is allegorical?
Not really, no. I mean, what do you compare it to?
Exactly. You have to take it. I mean,
an evening and a morning if it's an era.
I mean, they're arguing. We just read on Hugh Ross's website where they're arguing to take the Bible in context. Well, if they will take it in context, you can't have God. God cannot start off with an allegory or a metaphor, and then expect you to trust the rest of the Bible when he isn't using that. He has to start off with what literally happened. And so, not only that, I mean, if you reverse the situation, okay, well, even take this, all right, because they want to argue the 6-day thing, right? They want to say, well, the 6 days, he was talking about billions of years, okay, or like the day-age theory, what people bring up on that. And I don't know, have you ever had anyone talk to you about the day-age theory stuff? Because I know you've made videos on some of these topics before.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the day-age theory. In fact, I was debating someone about it just before you called.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bad idea. She doesn't like me now.
Oh, well, See, the Bible said that everybody's supposed to like us, didn't
Yeah, we're supposed to be the most popular one. We're supposed to be the most popular people on the planet.
it? I know, because salt doesn't irritate anybody, does it?
Yeah,
Oh no, we know. Anyway, here's the thing. So let me say. So what they'll say is that, well, when it said 6 days, it meant, it really meant billions of years. Okay, well, what they say is that, well, you can't take, you have to take it, metaphorically. You have to take it as an allegory. Well, what I say to them that in Exodus 24:16 it says, "And the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days." Did it cover it for 6 million years?
And was Jesus dead for 3 million?
Yeah. Was Jesus in the grave for 3 million years? Exactly.
And in Exodus 20:11, is God telling us to work for 6 eras and then rest for one? Crikey, that would be a lazy generation.
Exactly. And Joshua, he says Joshua 6:3, "And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do for 6 days." Did they circle the city for 6 million years? I mean,
Hopefully not.
here's the thing: is they're not applying the same thing in all places. They will apply their rules, about just about how a yom, if you put it with a number, it always means a literal 24-hour day. That you talk to people who speak Hebrew, they'll tell you that. I called up, because I was curious about that, so I called up one of the because I used to go to a Messianic Jewish congregation out in Ohio, and the guy that he was the leader of that, I called him up and I said, "What is this? What does this mean when they tell us? Does that mean 24 hours?" He said, "Yeah, that always means 24 hours when put with a number like that." And so the guy has read, write, and spoken Hebrew since he was a child. I think he ought to know. And the thing is, what they'll do is that they will apply that rule that it always means a 24-hour day. And I'm not saying that every place where it says day, that the Bible means a literal 24-hour day. Like they talk about the day of the Lord may not necessarily mean a 24-hour day. It could still mean a 24-hour day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. But the thing is, they'll apply it to everywhere except when it comes to Genesis, because Genesis disrupts their evolution theory, which is what this is all about. And on top of that, we have, I guess, where basically the whole thing is set up, the day age theory, the progressive creation stuff, because Hugh Ross teaches some of this progressive creation where he talks about like there were like 19 creations or something like that I've heard of. I don't know everything about it. I've never read Hugh Ross's books, like some of his personal books. I've only heard stuff about him. I'd be willing to read them if I had them. I just don't want to pay money for them. That's kind of my thing. I'm just being honest.
I blame you.
Yeah. So but the thing is, well, there's a lot of missionaries and things out there that need that money, and I don't see any reason to spend it on Hugh Ross. But the point being is that he started well, I'm getting off topic now, because he was a guy that started off, according to his testimony, he did not come to start reading the Bible and learn about Christianity until he was 27 years old, and he had already graduated from college. And he had already been taught the evolution theory and had this, so he tried to apply this to the Bible, but he knew full well, as everybody knows full well, and they never admit to it, he knew full well that if there was a worldwide flood, it would destroy the geologic column. Is that not right?
That's correct. It would also damage a lot of dating methods.
Exactly. And their dating, that's another good point I guess I usually don't bring up, is that it would definitely mess up their dating methods. Especially, and I know this is getting kind of off topic, but, when you talk about a canopy and stuff, that not everybody agrees with that, but I teach in seminar 2, with the flood destroying that as well, it creates all sorts of problems for anything from carbon dating to potassium argon or anything else, So, anyhow, I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of off topic there, but the point is that when you're talking about literal and metaphorical, one way or another, you put the shoe on the other foot. They will apply it in some areas, but when you turn around and use their logic against them, they don't want to apply it anywhere in the Bible except to the book of Genesis. That's where their focus is. It's always about the creation and the flood. It's basically for chapter 1 and chapter 7.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I think it's chapter 1 to 11.
Basically, yeah, they do get into that, but the main, the hardest part of their arguments come from 1 and 7, from what I've seen. But you're right, it does go through 1 through 11. They do pick at different things in there, but I would say 1 through 11 is strong evidence against their claims and against their theory. And basically, if somebody comes to any of you and says, basically you explain these to them, you give them some of the arguments we've been given so far, and they'll say, well, the Hebrew says, and they talk, a lot of people, number one, talk as if they know Hebrew, when most people that, talk as if they know Hebrew don't actually know any. I'm sorry to use Hugh Ross as yeah, well, yeah. I'm sorry to use Hugh Ross as an example, but he was actually, he goes on to public debates, and he'll talk as if he knows Hebrew, but there was a Christian that had tested him when he didn't know it, and he could not even say yes or no in Hebrew. He didn't know any Hebrew, but he talks as if he's an Hebrew expert, And they said, well, I talked to the Hebrew experts, and they say this and this and this. Okay, so are the Hebrew experts your authority, or is this book your authority? Okay? The average person ought to be able to read this book and understand it. We don't need a guru to tell us what it says. If the Bible says it gives understanding to the simple, I think that's in Psalm 119, then we don't need a guru to tell us what it says. We ought to be able to read it and understand. Now, there's another interesting one I've got to get to, and I got to get you to talk about this one, is if people are going to accept evolution, or basically the billions of years of progressive creation into the Bible, it actually destroys the marriage covenant. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, I had the verse up on Bible Gateway earlier that when Genesis... In fact, give us a sec. There will be clicking involved.
Because I know, what I remember is that it does reference to Matthew 19:4.
Yep, found it. Matthew 19:4 and 5. Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Mm-hmm. So he's basically saying there that because Adam and Eve did it, that's why we do it.
Oh, that's some feedback.
So that basically means that Adam and Eve are literal people.
So basically, when it says, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, Jesus Christ is referencing to Genesis chapter 1, is he not?
I'm too.
He has to be. There's no other way he can't be referencing to that. And so what has to happen is they got to be male and female from the start. And like you said, the next verse, in verse 5, it starts off and says, for this cause. And when we talked about that on the phone, I had never even caught that. You're absolutely correct. For this cause, the man leaves his mother and father and clings to his wife. That's the whole reason we have marriage. So if it doesn't start out that way, Adam has to be, made fully mature, and Eve the same way from the rib, made fully mature at the beginning, and they were married. This is how it has to start. Otherwise, you destroy the marriage covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And this to me is very strong evidence that this, because a lot of people, I don't know if you get this all the time. A lot of Christians like to, it's the ones that can't we all just get along Christians, and they try to make it seem like this is not an important issue. I don't know if you ever have that problem.
Well, I have that problem all the time, yeah.
Now, what do you respond to them when they say that?
That it's not an important issue.
Yeah, because what they'll say, like for example, they'll say, well, salvation's really the issue, and this isn't really that important, so I don't know why we're talking about it. It's usually an escape tactic, but what do you say to that?
I'll say, why did God feel the need to mention it like twice then?
Well, twice. I mean, if you talk about the...
and that's Jesus, twice that I know of.
Well, Jesus Christ... Yeah, there's a list of... Jesus Christ actually refers back to Genesis 25 times. So if it's not an important issue, like you said, that's a great answer for that. For Christians, if you guys want to remember that, why did Jesus Christ mention it that many times if it's not important? It's the foundation. And that's something else that you mentioned about the foundations be destroyed. What can the righteous do? And remember, you mentioned that when we had a discussion. And, that's I mean, what are our foundations of the Bible? Well, you open it up to the very first page, it'll tell you what the foundations are. If that's destroyed, then what are the righteous going to do? Well, the thing is, when people try to say this is not important and this doesn't affect salvation, folks, we have to stop and consider something. Now, I'm not trying to say that someone who claims to be a Christian and believe in evolution is not saved. I'm not going to say that, okay, because that's not for me to judge. However, I will say that someone, if you are believing it really concerns me that if you believe in a God that has to use blind fits, or excuse me, blind chance and misfits and death to get us here, that is a retarded God that's not worth worshiping, okay? He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. My God is perfect in all his ways. He knows what he's doing. He does it right the first time, and he has a plan for everyone. So that's the God I worship, and that's the God that the Bible describes. So what I'm really concerned about is that when people are claiming that God, and they're also claiming in Jesus Christ, because he's the creator, is he not? You still there with me?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. Jesus Christ
Yes,
is
he
the
is.
creator. Yeah, absolutely. So if Jesus Christ, you got to back me up. my word's not too good. You got to back me up. The thing is, if Jesus Christ is the creator, I mean, then you have to stop and consider what you're claiming here. You're claiming Jesus Christ is incompetent to be able to do it right the first time. He plans to play around with blind chance and misfits and death. And so when you say God and I say God, are we talking about the same God? When you say Christ and I say Christ, are we talking about the same one? Because the Christ that I know came to save the world from death, and that death is a horrible thing, that man brought death into the world. But when you want to talk about that Christ, you're talking about a God and a Christ that created death for us, and death is supposed to be a good thing because death is how we get ahead. So this is a very, very important issue for this, because if you start destroying the foundations and people start bringing in all sorts of thoughts of, well, I must have come from a monkey or something like that, which brings up another point. What is the image of God?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and that's something, I don't know, have you ever brought that up in debates before? Like, what's the image of God? Is he
I haven't, no.
well, is he, you've never done that? Oh, well, that's interesting. You can always ask, is he an amoeba? Is he a lobe-finned fish? Is he a monkey? I mean, what does he actually look like? Are we created in the image of God or not? If they say yes, we have to tell exactly what they were created as. And so there's all sorts of problems that we run into here. Did you have anything else on your list that you can remember that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, a bit about the snake.
Oh yeah, go ahead with that.
The least likely part of Genesis to be literal is Genesis 3:14, where God punishes the snake by making him eat dust.
Mm-hmm.
Now, originally I interpreted that metaphorically because science told me that snakes do not eat dust. But then I found Micah 7:17, which says, "They will lick dust like a snake, like creatures that crawl on the ground." Mm-hmm. And that really rather distressed me, because I thought, oh, hang on, now there's a problem, because I can't interpret it metaphorically anymore, and I'm going to have to say, right, there may be one inaccuracy in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Creation Ministry Internationals to the rescue! Because they told me about the Jacobson's organ, which basically, it's the organ on the top of the snake's mouth. It licks up dust, mm-hmm. It puts it to its mouth to smell it, and then it has to clean it. Gulp.
Yeah. And that makes perfect sense.
So the snake literally eats dust. Well,
all of its life.
Why is it the least likely bit to be literal is literal? Why isn't the rest of it literal?
Yeah. And
that one little bit of Genesis 1, and the rest of Genesis from chapters 1 to 11 is magically metaphorical?
Yeah, I know. That doesn't make any sense at all, because you can't just take cherry pick the parts that you want. You have to take it all together. And if you're not willing to do that, basically, and it still comes down to whether they want to take that, literal or not, it really comes down to what's your foundation? What are you standing on? Are you standing on the Bible to claim these things first, or are you standing on the humanistic education that you received? And that really becomes the problem, because if the Bible says something is a certain way and your science book says it's different, I mean, basically your science book is man's interpretation of what they observed around them. So you either go by man's interpretation or you go by God's interpretation. And so when you hold the two in front of them, they get kind of nervous because they won't choose. They try to find a different way out because you have to choose. And they don't want to do that, at least not in front of a live public audience. That's for sure. But that's fascinating about the snakes as well. And so I was asking for questions. So far we don't have any questions from our chat room, and I'm not sure, because mostly what I would I guess I'm trying to think of some of the things that I've seen in public debate, and it always comes back to these scientists say this, therefore, this is credible, and they always argue from authority of mankind. Now, when I say and when I tell people that people argue from authority, what I mean is you're arguing from mankind's authority. See, God has authority, so when you argue from authority of God, that's different. But when you're arguing from mankind's authority, now you have a house of cards, which is what they do. So I don't know. Is there anything other things that you wanted to talk about or point out to?
Well, regarding appeal to authority, there's a bunch of scientists that we can quote as well.
Uh-huh.
So we're basically saying, right, which authority do we choose? We pick and choose. Again, so we not only pick and choose from the Bible, we pick and choose from authorities, which is just another flimsy foundation.
Yeah. And one of the best, I guess, videos I've ever seen, I'd have to refer to Creation Science Evangelism.
I'm sorry, you crackled up a bit there.
Yeah, sorry. It's one of the best videos I've probably seen for examples of them, because what I'm about to tell you about, it would probably be from Creation Science Evangelism. They have I forget, they have a debate, so they have numbered. I don't remember which number it is, but they have one where Dr. Kent Hovind goes to Berkeley, and they, I guess, contacted 160 professors. All of them refused to debate him. Nobody would do it. So he talked for an hour and then took Q&A for like 2 hours. And so what he did, I mean, I've seen this a lot of different times because it's really interesting to listen to them respond to him. Most oftentimes, what they would do is they would come on and say, well, I want to see the scientist who says this and this. And then basically they would write them off because they did not believe in evolution. I mean, it's the same thing as when, for example, a long time ago, like when I first started this podcast, I started talking about how, some people used to complain because I had brought up, because that Creation Science Evangelism, they have a $250,000 challenge, a reward for anybody that can offer any scientific evidence for evolution. And everybody was like, oh, that's a fraud, that's a fraud, that's a fake, they have all sorts of problems with it. Well, here's the thing. If it's a fraudulent claim, then you sue them. You can sue them and get the money. The problem is, no evolutionist will sue them because they know full well that they'd have to put their evidence on trial in a court of law, and they know they'd be laughed out. That's why nobody sues them. So if you want to put your money where your mouth is, sue them and get the $250,000 because they've been waiting for 20 years for somebody to sue them for that money. And nobody
That long?
will. The what?
Is it that long?
Yeah, they've had that offer for 20 years and nobody has sued them for the money.
Huh.
See, they want to put creation on trial, but they don't want to put evolution on trial because they know what would happen. And they know it would be found out as a religious view. So the thing is, well, I mean, and so these guys, they all talk tough when they hide behind their computer screens online, but when they want to come out and actually do something about it, they basically back down. And the whole point is that, one of the people I heard talk about, and they said, oh, that's fraudulent because all the scientists that are on his panel to review the answer, they're just creationists. Well, think about that. Why would it matter if they're a creationist or not? If they're a scientist and they're in a legitimate scientific field, what would it matter whether they're a creationist or evolutionist? See, the point is that they have to get the biased on their side in order to win the argument because they have a religion that they don't want to admit they have a religion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
exactly.
Basically how that works. Have you run into problems like that too?
All the time.
All the time. Because I know you talk about this a lot, and I think this would be a good time because I think we're going to wrap up the show in just a minute. So anyhow, what I wanted to do, I guess, was bring up, and I don't know if you guys know or not, but Jay has a website. Now, I want to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it, if you're watching this from YouTube, it's going to have a link in the comments, but it basically is theory-of-a-man.wetpaint.com. And if you go check this out, he's got all sorts of stuff on here. I'm going to pop this up on the screen real quick so you guys can see. He's got some stuff on here. I had it load a little bit slow, but that's probably because your server's over in the UK, so just be patient with it and give it a moment. Everything will load. But he has all sorts of videos, and apparently I think you have a discussion forum on here too, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, I warned you beforehand, you might have a few atheists, because most of our subscribers are atheists, so you might have a bunch of people come on here and harass you, but But
Well, if they spam it up, it'll just show their immaturity.
yeah, basically.
I will leave it up and let people see how ridiculous they are. That's a warning, guys.
Well, also, if you guys want to check out his YouTube channel, I've got it right here on the screen. This is it's Malakai J. That's Malakai, and that's on YouTube. If you want to go check it out, he's got a bunch of videos, and I think you do a little bit of video blogging, but you have a lot of really good information on there. And like I said, there's probably not anybody I agree with 100%, but I do encourage people to go check out your videos too, and I don't encourage people just to stick with what I say, because if people think they're going to get a bunch of all the knowledge they need from me, you're sorely mistaken, okay? I'm not the only one that has things to teach, and there's definitely some things I've learned from Jay, and maybe that he's learned from me, and that's how we do things here. So I want to encourage you guys to, because I think you've been on YouTube for a couple years now, and I want to encourage other Christians to go check him out as well, because he has some good stuff. So anyway, I think we're going to wrap this up here for now, since we don't have any questions from the chat. I think we covered most of it. Did you have anything else you want to cover?
Come on, guys, fire them at us.
Well, I think we did a good job. Basically covered the basis of it, and I think I'm going to write an article on this in the future. Just not right now because I'm pretty busy with some other stuff. But anyhow, Jay, I really appreciate you joining us today.
Not a problem.
All right, and but anyway, I think we're going to hang up now, and you take care, and God bless you. Okay.
Okay. God bless. Night.
All right. See you later. All right, folks. Well, anyway, I appreciate you guys joining us tonight, and that was really interesting. Especially, I mean, one of the major things that was surprising me was that when he was teaching, when he was showing that the covenant of marriage is actually destroyed if you don't take the literal interpretation of Genesis, which I found very interesting. So anyhow, so you want to join us next week. Next week is going to be the 30th. Now, I don't know. I'll have to double check and confirm it. But next week, I think we're going to have a guest on the show. He was a former Roman Catholic, grew up Roman Catholic, and finally got saved. I think, if I remember the story right, he was a Roman Catholic, then became an atheist, and then got saved later, and now he's a King James Bible-believing Christian. So he's going to be live here in our house next week to discuss some of his experiences in the Roman Catholic Church and as an atheist, and to talk about how to talk to different people who've been through those kind of situations. So that'll be January 30th. That'll be show number 24. You want to be here next week to fire up your questions and comments on there so we can discuss those live on the show. Anyway, thanks for joining us again tonight, everybody, and we'll see you next time.